Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us across the fence. I'm Fran Stoddard. On a July morning in 1968, shots were fired at a home in Irisburg, Vermont. The shooting would become known as the Irisburg Affair, and nearly 55 years later, the affair is still talked about and written about. The home belonged to David Lee Johnson, who was an African-American Baptist minister. The shooting was a racial attack that shattered Vermont's quiet image in the tumultuous year that had already seen murders of Robert Kennedy and Martin Luther King. In the wake of the shooting, a commission appointed by then Governor Phil Hoff concluded that the state police acted inappropriately against Reverend Johnson during its investigation. Now, a new book written by a former state police commander adds a different perspective to the Irisburg affair and other past controversies involving the state police. Students in UVM's Center for Research on Vermont sat down with a former cop, now author, for this discussion.
Hi, my name is Sarah Blow, and today I'm sitting down with author Gary Shattuck to discuss his new book. Hi, Gary. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Good morning, Sarah.
So, tell me a bit about this book.
It's a big book. It's got just shy of 1,000 endnotes.
Wow.
Dealing with an important period in Vermont history between 1968 and 1980, roughly, that begins and ends at the sound of gunfire. In particular, the town of Irisburg saw a violent event happen in '68, and then I moved forward in the story through the next decade, through the Paul Lawrence years. Old-timers that have been around know what Lawrence was up to with a corrupt state police cop. And then what happened within the state police up to 1979, the internal problems there that eventually resulted in a state trooper going to the state house with his service revolver and killing himself.
Wow. And can you describe the Irisburg affair?
To say Irisburg affair is a shorthand way to talk about a few moments that happened in the early morning hours of July 1968. What it's based upon was a white man firing a shotgun into the front of a home, an Irisburg home occupied by a black family. And the state police got involved in it and began a rather lengthy investigation that finally resulted in the arrest and charging of the white man that did that. The aspect of the Irisburg affair that has taken on such controversy over the years is because of the nature of the fact that there was a black man and his black family involved being shot at by a white man, and the state police, which was a 100% white organization, coming in and investigating that. The allegations were that the state police delayed their investigation, that they deviated from a normal criminal investigation and started investigating the black man.
And do you think that the state police handled the situation in the best way possible? Do you agree with how they handled it?
I have to say yes. And I'm a former state police officer. Mm-hmm. I was with the state police between 75 and 87. And I don't consider myself biased in that respect because I take them to task in the balance of the book, in which, leading up to the state trooper's death, in 1979, and I take the command staff to task because they handled it egregiously. I reviewed literally thousands of pages at the state archives. They have the records of the Irisburg Board of Inquiry, the 700 and something pages of transcripts, the 187 documents, the exhibits, and then also there was the Keyser Commission, of which there were thousands of pages of documents, which was dealing with the officer's death in 1979. Do I think the police handled the investigation perhaps fairly or correctly? Absolutely. They did what they had to do. But unfortunately, there were interjections of racism, which the records simply do not substantiate.
You've written 6 books. Is this one your favorite?
Yeah, I mean, I've done Shays Rebellion, the trials of Shays Rebellion, the trials involving Ethan Allen and the ejectment trials with two other historians. The Black Snake Affair in Montpelier or in Burlington, where 3 men were killed. Vermont's first drug epidemic in the 1800s. All of them were very interesting, but this one, to make a connection between the events of Irisburg and its profound effect on the state police that I never really understood, which forced it to pull itself inward. It experienced a kind of institutional post-traumatic stress syndrome as a result of the trauma of Irisburg. They pulled within themselves, became uncommunicative with the legislature, which caused problems in funding and budgeting. Great problems with the state's governors. To see that happen and then see the percolating problems within St. Johnsbury that they couldn't deal with because of the internal problems, existing problems within the department. It was an amazing chronology to connect all of these things together. So I would say this was a challenging book, but once I got into the facts and put them all together, it made sense. And I found it probably the most satisfying of any of the books I've done.
So where and when can this book be found?
Well, it's just appeared on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, so it's available online. And I expect it's going to be in local area bookstores and also through the Center for Research on Vermont at the University of Vermont.
Wonderful. Well, I'm looking forward to reading it, and thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Our thanks to author Gary Shattuck and the UVM students in the Center for Research on Vermont who produced that segment. It's not easy to make a living off the land, but those who do it, whether they're in farming or forestry, say their work is rewarding. Let's join Keith Silva in the woods to learn about the business of logging from the ground up.
If a tree falls in the forest and John Parker is around, you can bet it makes a sound. Over the winter, Parker has been working with a landowner in Springfield to thin out pine, remove Norway maple, and cut about 50 cords of firewood.
No guts, no glory, right?
Parker runs Brookside Timber Harvesting. In fact, he is Brookside Timber Harvesting. To his fellow loggers, he's what's considered a small operator.
So what's a small operator?
I don't know, it's one guy and a chainsaw, skidder.
For 25 years, Parker has been working the woods. He logs, sugars, runs a portable sawmill, and he works with a forester to remove invasive species. He's been thinking about expanding his logging operation. He'd like to buy more equipment and hire someone to help him out. But Parker knows he has limitations.
Oh, I'm a good logger, but I'm not a good business when it comes to doing paperwork. I don't like paperwork, really didn't know where to start. I could have maybe fumbled through some stuff on the internet, but it doesn't take much for me to get sidetracked.
Parker has an accountant. What he needed was a business plan. To help him get his business on track, he contacted Chris Lindgren, a University of Vermont Extension forest business educator.
John's smart. The fact that John knew he wasn't good at the paperwork, he had someone helping him do that part, made it easier to sort of assess the financial position that he was in. And that was a small part of the business planning process, actually. You know, the way I work with most folks is I've got a bunch of exercises that we go through, one-page plans, goal setting, write up a history of business, and through small chunks, we basically put a business plan together.
Chris kind of made it easy. He worked with me and gave me little projects to complete, which worked well for me. Just little tasks, not just dump the whole thing on me, and kind of worked at my pace.
Working together, Lindgren and Parker set some goals.
One of the first things that I try to do with folks is to do some goal setting. And his first three goals, one was to write a business plan to get financing for a piece of equipment. The other was to get licensed in chemical application for invasive species. Another was to work on marketing and build out a website.
Business plans are living documents, and like life, they can change. The equipment Parker had his eye on was a feller buncher, a combination chainsaw and excavator for pulling and hauling logs. But when Parker's license to remove invasive species came through, he had to make a business decision.
Forestry is always a moving target, and when we started, the buncher looked like the way to go, and this other avenue opened up, so the buncher is kind of still in the works, but it's not as much a priority as it was when Chris and I first started.
Is that okay?
I think it's okay. I mean, you've got to work in the woods. It's just like farming or you got to make hay when the sun shines, and this seems to be working out and paying well. Not sure, the buncher would work. It's just this seems to be a good avenue for the short term. I think to be a small operator and to move forward, you're going to have to be diverse and be able to be flexible. And this just kind of wasn't where I planned to be, but it seems to work out. And I think the buncher and that type operation is inevitably where I'm headed. But instead of being a month or a year, it may be a couple of years to get this avenue taken care of before we put the buncher into the plan.
One of the reasons I like to work using one-page plans or using exercises is it allows it to change. It allows you to continuously work on your plan. Oftentimes people do just write a business plan to get financing, and then that's it, they shelve it. Much better to continue working with your plan, updating your plan, changing your plan. Facts on the ground change, and then you've got to change with them.
If it wasn't for Chris helping me out, I wouldn't do it. I would just keep muddling along like I had been and find money if I wanted something and jockey stuff around. And if it hadn't been for him helping me, no, I probably wouldn't even mess around with it.
There's a saying, love what you do, and you'll never work a day in your life. It's advice Parker lives by.
There's a lot of easier ways to make a living.
I think I know where this is going. Why do I do this? I guess I love it. You have to love to be a logger. I like being outdoors. I like setting my own destiny. I complain about it all the time and swear I'm never going to do it again, and then I go right back to it. It's nice dealing with customers. It's rewarding to see at the end of the day a big pile of wood. It's physical, challenging, dangerous work, but it's after a day or two you'll get used to it.
A good logger knows when to cut and what to keep. A good businessman knows when to ask for help to achieve what he's got in mind. Thanks to UVM Extension's Forest Business Program, John Parker is both. In Springfield, I'm Keith Silva with Across the Fence.
For more information on UVM Extension's Forest Business Program, contact your local Extension office. And that's our program for today. Once again, thank you for joining us Across the Fence. I'm Fran Stoddard. Stay well.